Welcome back, OIG family, to another exciting episode in our AMA series. Today, I'm joined by James Bailey, who is the COO of SUBQUERY. Welcome to the show, James. It's a pleasure to have you back on the show. I don't know if anybody recalls, but we had another AMA last year around this time, and it's just great to see you again. So, how have you been?
Yeah, it's great to be back. Thanks for having me. And that last AMA back, I think May last year, 11 months ago, but that feels like a lifetime.
Yeah.
God, that's how life goes so fast in this day and age. But no, it's wonderful to be back, and thank you very much for having me again. It's a pleasure to be here on the show.
Awesome. Yeah. So, we have a lot of our returning viewers watching this AMA, but for those that are new, could you give us a little bit of introduction to who you are, your involvement with SUBQUERY, and then we can kind of get into what SUBQUERY really is.
Yeah, sure. So my involvement, what I do at SUBQUERY, I'm Chief Operating Officer, which is a kind of a weird title for crypto. It kind of just means I do whatever is needed of me during the day, whether that is working with the developers, working with the product team on a roadmap, checking in with billing and accounting, reporting stuff, and even helping out and pitching in with doing customer demos and even AMAs like this. So it's a bit of everything, which is kind of fun because I quite enjoy doing a bit of everything. I originally studied and trained as a software engineer, so I can write code, although very dangerously. I have in many cases put bugs into production, which is never fun.
Yeah.
And I have worked in different industries, so it's kind of fun to play with different things at different times. But as you know, right, in this industry, in crypto, you never get a chance to sleep easily, really. It's kind of everything's moving so fast all the time.
Yeah, ultimately, we're at the cutting edge of blockchain technology, and I think that is kind of the reason why we can't sleep. Every day is a new adventure. Every day is a new evolution in really recreating what we see in the world. So it's a great time to be alive. That's for sure. So yeah, for all the new viewers, can you give us like a brief summary of what SUBQUERY is? Why do we need it? How is it important?
Yeah, sure. So before I kind of say what SUBQUERY is, I'm going to start with, what is the problem that it kind of solves? So imagine you're an application developer and you're assigned to build your next big blockchain protocol or application, whether it's an NFT platform or a wallet or a DeFi app on any kind of network, a blockchain network. One of the biggest challenges is data, right? Data is such an essential ingredient to all of these Web2 companies that are big, and it's no different from Web3. Having access to data is important and very critical to the success and the user experience of your tool, your application, your platform, whatever it is. The problem with blockchain, though, is blockchain and by design makes data or accessing data very, very difficult. The same reasons why blockchains are immutable and resilient and decentralized. Essentially, what that means is that a blockchain is a chain of blocks, and they're spread around the world. And you can ask someone what's the latest block, what's the contents of the latest block. It's really easy, but asking a question, something a bit more complex, like give me the last 10 transactions that you made, or give me all the NFTs that you own, or give me all the trade history or the transfer history of these NFTs, for example. Those are very, very difficult questions to ask a blockchain. And the reason is it's very similar, it's like a book. So imagine a blockchain is like a book, and every different block is a page of your book. Now, if you were to ask a book, or someone had a book in front of them, like a novel, let's say Harry Potter, you'd ask them, like, give me the last 10 times Ron Weasley appeared. I don't know. Fuck, I have to scroll back through the pages. I have to search for Ron's name on each page. It's a nightmare. You can't really do that easily. And that exact same reason, because the data is on each page and it's separate and it's not searchable or sortable. It's not in a great format. Those exact same reasons are why it's difficult to manage data on a blockchain. And the solution to these problems of this data that's there, but it's kind of hard to access and hard to use, is what we call an indexer. And SUBQUERY is one of the leading indexers in Web3. We've been around for a little over 2 years now. Again, time flies. And an indexer is a piece of software. In SUBQUERY's case, it's an open source, flexible piece of software that scans through your blockchain. It pulls off the certain pieces of data that you want. So in this case, I only care about when Ron Weasley appears in my blockchain. So it pulls off every occurrence of his appearance and saves it in a more performant kind of database. And databases are the things that we've optimized over many, many decades. The output of this is that when you're building an application to show your friends when Weasley last appeared in the book, or whatever your application does, whether it's listing out NFTs or a DeFi app or a wallet, you can access data a lot faster, a lot more efficiently than someone can if they were talking directly to the blockchain. So it's a core developer tool that many developers across different ecosystems use to build their applications faster, because it kind of saves time of building your own indexing, but also to build better applications because that data is more available, it's faster. It means you get a better user experience. It means the upload's faster. It's more intuitive, it's more easy to understand, it's got, all the things you want from an application. So essentially, we're a developer tool that helps many developers build the next generation of decentralized applications. And that's kind of what we're doing. That's our kind of core mission. And that's kind of SUBQUERY in a nutshell, I guess.
Yeah, no, and it's great to really explain to our viewers what it is, because there's a huge demand for indexers right now. I mean, really, up until maybe a year ago, I think there was only really one known name, which was, I think, the Graph, right? And
That's correct.
and now we have SUBQUERY coming, really showing off the true potential of what an indexer can do. Really blowing the numbers out of the water when compared to what the Graph could do, right?
Yeah.
So give us kind of like an understanding of the scale here. Like on what, I guess what I'm trying to say here is like, how much can SUBQUERY handle, really looking into the future? Because as we mass adoption becomes more and more prevalent within the blockchain industry, we're gonna have a lot more data, right? So how does that play into SUBQUERY's capacity?
Yeah, there's a couple of things to unpack there. So you're right. Up until a couple of years ago, the Graph was the only player, and they've done a tremendous job. They've done a huge job, and that's why they're one of the largest application networks out there, right? They're a Goliath in this space.
Yeah.
There are two different types of indexes. There are other players for indexing, right? So we kind of classify them into two different types. One of them is kind of open source flexible indexes, which are like the Graph and SUBQUERY. We're very similar. The other ones are more like centralized indexes. And you're seeing a lot of these start up very recently. In fact, every month we see a new kind of centralized index start up. These are like Covalent and Unmarshall. They index that data into a centralized place, and then you kind of like ask them or pull some of that data from their data sets. But we're a big believer in this decentralization piece. In terms of the scale, right? A lot of people ask me, like, who are your customers?
Yeah.
And the answer to this question is kind of, it's not really a great soundbite, but it's really anyone, any developer. Like, if you need access to fast, efficient, reliable data for your application or for your needs, whether you're a data scientist, a dApp developer, a protocol developer, someone doing just research over different assets, anyone that needs data, right? You need an indexer, and that's kind of our addressable market. And so really our customer base is anyone that needs data. It's kind of interesting that way. The scale for us is huge, though. As you said, exactly right. The number of new competitors is coming in is huge, and there's a reason, right? Because everyone needs us. Everyone needs indexes. And one of our big challenges since I last talked to you about it almost a year ago is around scaling to these new different ecosystems, to go wherever developers are and give them the core tools that they need to build their applications, whether that's on Ethereum or Polkadot, Cosmos or Avalanche or Algorand or Near. We want to be there to help them with that.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect segue into, this next segment here, where we talk really about, how you guys started out. Really, you started on Polkadot, and then you moved over to Avalanche, and since then, you've had some explosive growth. So talk about, providing support for these other chains and how
Yeah,
that's been.
yeah. So like we, as you're right, we started on Polkadot, and one thing about Polkadot is that Polkadot is like multi-chain by design. There is like a relay chain, and everyone has these different para chains, and so from day one, we were always thinking about how do we make SUBQUERY extensible to all these different chains within Polkadot and with outside Polkadot as well. So Polkadot was our genesis. One of the things that made us start Polkadot is we talked to many different development teams in Polkadot, and they're like, we need indexing. And the graph wasn't interested because the graph only really focused at that point on EVM chains. So we saw a huge gap in the market for indexes for non-EVM chains. So we went from Polkadot, we went to Avalanche, we also went to Cosmos. Cosmos, again, multi-chain by design. There are many Cosmos zones. Cosmos is kind of riding a hype wave right now, and there's a lot of new Cosmos zones coming out. But again, we go into it thinking, how do we make this so that any new Cosmos zone, SUBQUERY will kind of automatically support? And that's kind of, led our kind of approach to this. We moved to Near as well, another non-EVM chain that hadn't got a great indexer. Algorand, another example, where there's no existing indexer because it's not an EVM chain. And now we're moving towards EVM chains as well. And the reason is because we've got all these customers on these other networks, Polkadot, Cosmos, that want to also go multi-chain. And there might be a customer, let's say on Algorand, that is saying, look, I'm building this DeFi protocol. The best way I can improve the TVL on my DeFi protocol, the number of users using it on a daily basis, is by bridging over to another chain, bridging over to Ethereum or whatever. And we keep hearing these from our customers, and one of our like our goals here is if we support all these different chains, and we support them in the same way. So if you build a SUBQUERY project for one chain, moving it or adapting it to work for your protocol for another chain is like a matter of a few hours of dev, right? Like it's a couple of things to change and testing, and then it's ready to go, right? From the day you can have the same data set over there as well. So we're a great tool to help people cross that boundary and move to different chains. And I think this is something we're going to see in the next cycle, is the big companies or projects in Web3 in the future will be the ones that have successfully managed to capture users and value from all these different ecosystems. We're not going to stop seeing these ecosystems as islands in the sea. We need to start looking at them as interconnected places. And I'm hoping we're going to be a big part of that and help that. But yeah, we've done a lot of work recently in EVM. So last week we announced our support for Ethereum. This week, very recently, we announced our support for Polygon. And I'm sure you can guess the next kind of announcements of EVM chains we're going to be supporting, because again, as I said, we designed SUBQUERY so that we go into these ecosystems, and if we support the kind of core foundations of EVM, we should support them all. And so now it's just a case of testing that, getting example projects ready, getting the BD process ready, and making sure our developers have the support they need to get started using SUBQUERY.
Yeah, and a very intuitive approach there, because you looked at where the demand was, and you saw that Polkadot was in lack for a better word, lacking with regards to indexers. And because it's multi-chain by design, I would assume it kind of gave you a great lesson in interoperability and how to kind of transfer those lessons into other ecosystems. And you've kind of just grown into this powerhouse, but because of this angle that you've taken, right? and now you're starting to bridge over to EVM, and with your announcement of the Ethereum indexing on Ethereum as well as Polygon, this is huge. And I'm just let's kind of explain for our viewers too and how big this is. But why is indexing on Ethereum so important? What like what does it
Yeah, but
accomplish?
I think like it's in a way it's kind of like an 80-20 rule, right? Like 80% of the value in Web3 is still on like Ethereum and the layer 2 scaling solutions on top of
Exactly.
it. So although our genesis was providing our service to ecosystems that had no indexing
Mhm.
to start with, the past 2 years of all that practice, of all that experience that we've gained, of the performance that we've put into it, the development effort we've put into our SDK, means that now we're extremely competitive in Ethereum. And so it makes sense for us to go there, and our customers over this ecosystem are screaming for us to come over. So it's a big opportunity. It's a huge opportunity for us, and we've done a lot of effort into our performance. One of the main things that people look at when they're choosing an indexer is apart from the decentralization aspect of it, which we kind of solve, we can go into that later, is performance and features. And in terms of performance, like if you compare us to the Graph, for example, project, we're almost 2 times faster of indexing speed. And that means you can do fast iterations. That means you can get to market faster. It means if you want to change your application, you can re-index your data a lot faster than you could otherwise. That makes a huge difference to developers out there. And then the features, right? Like we have a lot more features than the Graph. We allow customers to index non-deterministic data. So we allow them to make API calls or bring in different libraries. We relax the restrictions that other services like the Graph put on developers. So for us, it's all about listening to our customers. And you can hear that, you can see that in terms of going to ecosystems where they want us to go to, but also adding features they want us to go to. We have a huge developer community. We have very close relations with the hundreds of customers that we have. We have Telegram groups with many of them. In fact, I wake up every morning to a stream of Telegram messages. That's the way I start my day these days. But it's really important. And coming from a product management background, the access that we have at SUBQUERY directly to our customers, directly to the developers that use SUBQUERY every day, is unparalleled. I've never had it before, and it's such a rewarding experience for us to have, to be able to talk to them and hear from them directly about what we can do and improve.
100%. I agree completely. Like there's this level of communication that we haven't seen before, and that really strengthens your product in a way where you can really have live feedback, right? And the kind of rewinding back to last year, in our previous AMA, we spoke about the launch of your public testnet, and I think that's kind of what really sparked all of this, right? This is kind of the reason why you have a lot of members in your community, active members. And I guess I wanted to know, like, how did that really go? How did the
Yeah, it was exciting. So we are building a decentralized network, and this has always been a dream and a goal of ours. Is indexes is like one of the last remaining centralized pieces of a tech stack of a decentralized application. So you have a decentralized application, it works off smart contracts on the chain. It has a website that's stored on a decentralized file storage system. It does stuff in decentralized ways, but the indexer is like still the one server that kind of is centralized. It's like the one kind of Achilles heel of an application, and that's kind of because historically indexes have been expensive to run, a lot of data storage requirements. It's a bit difficult to decentralize those. So it's been a long held goal of ours to decentralize this last piece of that tech stack. And so we're building the SUBQUERY network to do that. And a SUBQUERY network is essentially a decentralized infrastructure hosting platform where I can write a SUBQUERY project for my app. So my app is indexing the locations of Ron Weasley and Harry Potter books for some silly reason. It allows me to like view all the spells he's made in every book. I write a subquery project to do that, or to capture that data. I then give it out to the world and I say, can someone please index and organize this data for me, follow these instructions in my project, and give me the data, and I reward you. So the subquery token's used to reward those people. And we also have other participants, delegators. So delegator can kind of support their favorite indexer. And we have been working on this for some time. It's a massive network, it's quite complicated. But last year, just after I talked to you, we launched our testnet. We had 3 phases, and the third phase was a kind of a big public open testnet. We had 2,369 indexes sign up and participate in that. So they set up the computer, they started indexing a project, they registered themselves, they started like giving away data in the testnet. Like this is not just like people like writing in a form expression of interest. This is like following pretty detailed like setup guides for like how to set up the indexer and run it locally in your computer. And it really is amazing. The level of interest in this, because people see the size and opportunity for a decentralized hosting provider. It's a core piece of the tech stack, and every project needs it. So there's a big opportunity there. But also, it was really good to see, like, we put a lot of effort, and our developers and our UX designers put a lot of effort into making the decentralized network as open and as accessible as possible. And part of that was making it very easy for anyone to sign up as an indexer and to participate in it. And having 2,369 indexes is indicative of how easy that was, right? Like people kind of give up after a while, if we make it hard for them. So this is like how easy it was to participate. We are very happy with that. We've gone back and done some changes, and we're getting close to launching our mainnet very soon. We're just kind of waiting to get a few more kind of polished things done and release a few more features. But it's very, 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 very close for us launching. Now we're getting to the other things like launching the token and talking to exchanges and all these other things right now. So there's a lot of moving parts for launching a network to success. And I'm sure you can understand it's not as simple as just saying, let's go.
Yeah.
You've got to get a whole team behind you and all working in the same direction.
Yeah, and it's incredible. Like to say that you've been busy is really an understatement. For like you guys have really done some incredible work in the past year, and that's why it's an exciting time. And as always, OIG is here to support. And yeah, it's just great to see. So let's switch gears here and move over to our Twitter question segment. And these are questions that were selected from our announcement made over a little over a week ago. So we got some great questions here from our Twitter followers. And make sure you follow us on Twitter in case you're not already. But yeah, so our first question here is from Crypto Vortex. And this person asks, it's actually relating to your topic of indexers and delegators. So among some of your competitors, there is a serious imbalance between indexers and delegators in terms of the ability to change delegation rates without warning or withdrawal of delegated tokens. How does SUBQUERY plan to balance the delegators and indexers?
Yeah, that's a very technical and very deep question. I quite like it. Someone's definitely gone through the white paper or been burnt on another network. So just to remind everyone, indexers are the people that are collecting and organizing the data from a subquery project. So they're kind of technical people that are sitting up the compute on their hardware or on a cloud provider and picking a project and indexing that and organizing and selling that data to the network. Delegators are everyday people, you and I, that have some spare subquery tokens that are staking their tokens on their favorite indexes to support them, and they will earn or receive a cut of the rewards that indexer receives. So the way that indexers can attract more delegation is obviously increase the reward rate. They can provide more rewards, or they can just be a really good indexer. Like if you're a really good solid indexer of great history, it's like picking your favorite validator. Really, like if they're a great validator, there's great history, heaps of uptime, you kind of want to go there, right? So there's a few things to unpack with that. The first one is the imbalance. So a lot of networks will have a large number of delegators, but a very small number of indexes or validators. And the reason why is a lot of these networks make it really, really difficult to sign up as a validator. And most of the reasons is because it requires a huge amount, like a high staking threshold. So the graph, for example, requires 100,000 graph tokens to stake to become an indexer. And I think the current price of of a GRT token, the graph, is around 20 cents. So it's still like 20,000 US dollars. So you have to stake and acquire to become an indexer. And that's not really accessible for the average person. Like, that's a lot of money. That's like that's not really feasible. In many cases, it's like a house deposit. So, part of what we're designing SUBQUERY is to make it more accessible, so that you don't require a mammoth staking threshold that locks everyone out except for the whales or the 1%. So that's one part we're going to address. The second one is that you have to be very careful in terms of the restrictions on indexes to change that delegation reward rate. And for us, one of the main things is that if an indexer does change reward rate, they have to give everyone like a lot of notice, like 2 weeks of notice that we're going to decrease that reward rate. And that kind of notice is enough for people to say, well, hang on, I'm going to change and move to someone else, right? So giving a lot of notice, and also that we're building tools that notify delegators. So that, if you want to, you can kind of sign up and get a bot to send you a message in Telegram saying, the delegation rate is decreased. You might want to consider reassessing your delegation here. So it's about the balance of like how flexible you make it, but how do you avoid situations where an indexer kind of has a massive rate, going to attract heaps of delegation, and then like rug pulls everyone and changes and decreases it. So we want to try to prevent that. So that's the main thing. So there's a lot of like time frames that the minimum kind of like time period that you can change it, and not allowing people to change like that. Like they have to give like weeks of warning before they can change these rates.
Yeah, no, and that's a great way to mitigate any stress on delegators and indexers in a sense where they have to wait, right? It's almost like the law, right? So that's good, and you make a good point about really the reputation. I think of both the indexers and delegators in a sense where that kind of causes them to or is kind of the reason for attracting delegators to indexers, right? Depending on your previous reputation. So, that's something that it's in their best interest to provide good value instead of, looking to rug pull. Great. So let's move on to our second question here. And this is from a person named Yasin. Yasin asks, can you share with us some applications or dApps that currently work with the SUBQuery's SDK? How has the feedback been? Is it encouraging?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I kind of touched on this before and slightly earlier when I mentioned I'm commonly asked, like, what is a standard application that uses SUBQuery? And the answer was anyone that needs data. That's a very vague answer, but it's true. We do find a lot of success though in a few different verticals specifically. The first one is wallets. Wallets have a need for transaction histories and staking histories and rewards over time, and they need that data quickly and for every kind of account or address on chain. So we have a lot of success with different wallets, within Polkadot, outside in Cosmos as well. We're working with a few wallets to provide index data back to them. In terms of other vertical, we do a lot of work with is scanners and block explorers. So we do some work with a few open source block explorers where we index every block, every transaction, every log, call or event or whatever you call it, in whatever chain you're interested in. And they show that in the UI in a kind of open source block explorer. And that's something we find very in demand by a lot of those smaller networks, small Cosmos networks or small Polkadot networks that want a explorer but don't want to pay big bucks for like a third-party explorer or a big commercial explorer. We do a lot of work with NFT platforms. So NFT platforms have a high need for kind of visual UIs, be able to show you all the NFTs in a collection, show you the transfer history and the purchase histories of these NFTs. And there's a lot of customers of ours with NFTs, whether on Moonbeam or on Cosmos, or and we're talking to quite a few on Ethereum right now as well, to index and provide data for the applications for NFTs. DeFi as well. There's a few DeFi apps there, like for example, like Akala was a big DeFi player in Polkadot. Their entire application was built off SUBQUERY projects. And there's others like that. Every bit of data you see on the website comes from a SUBQUERY project somewhere, because it shows you, the TVL over time and the ratios, the liquidation ratios, or whatever. These are calculated rates. You calculate them based off on-chain data, but they're still calculated in real time. And that's what SUBQUERY is really good at, is organizing that data and calculating that every block, so you have the latest information up to date. What else? What other verticals? I think it mostly sums it up. Again, there's a lot of people just doing research, doing data insights. So we do a lot of work with some ecosystem and foundation teams to give them the tools they need to kind of do their own metrics. So if they want to, if you're building a Cosmos zone, for example, and you want to have a metric on the number of IBC messages sent or received by your zone, using SUBQUERY is a perfect example of how you calculate that. And we do a lot of work with zones to provide dashboards and metrics to their core team that they use to kind of drive success or measure adoption in their ecosystem. So yeah, a lot of different kind of verticals in those kind of regards.
Cool. Okay, let's move on to our last question here. And this one comes from Mango Juice. And this person asks, do you see any potential for AI integrations within SUBQUERY?
Yeah, that's a forward-looking question. AI is getting a lot of conversation, a lot of chat at the moment, especially with ChatGPT, as I'm sure you've heard about and seen and played with. I think people are looking at blockchain and trying to figure out how it works with AI. And one of the things that you need for AI, and one of the reasons why ChatGPT was so successful is you just need data. You need a lot of data. And so we've done a lot of work with teams that are looking into this in terms of they want to collect data from different ecosystems. They want to organize this data. They want to combine that data into one place. And then they want to run kind of AI models over that data. They want to put an AI on there to ask questions of that data set. And that's kind of the big area that we're working and looking into is how do we work with these teams that are focusing on AI, and to use our tool to organize data to give them better data for the AIs. Because to build an AI that works well, that AI needs a lot of data. It needs that data in a nicely massaged, fine-tuned format. We're also doing a lot of work with a few AI-focused chains. So Fetch AI, for example, on Cosmos is one of the big ones. They use us for a lot of their own applications internally. Again, it all comes back down to if you need to build an AI is going to be extremely hungry for well-organized, structured data that it can train itself on. And SUBQUERY is going to be a key piece of that going forward.
Amazing. Good, great to hear. I mean, like you said, AI is a pretty big topic right now, in pretty much anywhere you look. So, but it's also impressive to see and know what the future would look like with AI integration at scale. So that's really cool. So let's just wrap up here and touch a little on your roadmap. I mean, it's been, like we said, a year since we last spoke. What's kind of some of the great achievements since then? And then looking forward, we talked about the mainnet. Give us some insight as to what exciting things are coming up.
There's 3 achievements I'd like to kind of point towards in the last 11 months since we last talked. Firstly, it's the raw number of chains that we now support. So Polkadot, Avalanche, Algorand, Near, Flare, Ethereum, Polygon, who else? Cosmos, of course. Like there's 9 chains, 9 main layer ones there. And that number is only going to increase. As we get better and better at this, that number is only going to accelerate and increase. So from going from like 1 network a year ago to 9 networks now, 9 different layer ones means that we've increased our market, increased our kind of the number of possible customers that we have by like 9 times. But in reality, it's more. So that's been one big achievement for SUBQUERY. And that's come with a lot of learnings of how do we apply this to these ecosystems, because each ecosystem is slightly different. They operate slightly differently. The way the data is formatted on their chain slightly differently. I made so many mistakes when I'm talking to someone in a particular ecosystem, and I'm like talking about like transactions and events and whatever, and that's not how it's saved in the ecosystem. They have actions and logs and whatever. Like it's different terminology everywhere. It's kind of boggles the mind sometimes. So that's one. The second one is that testnet I talked about before. Launching that testnet, seeing the success of it, and being where we are now, where we're very, very close to launching the mainnet, and it's looking really, really good, is a huge achievement for us. And then thirdly, we've done a huge amount of effort, like the last 6 months especially. The focus has primarily been on performance optimization of our core product. And to come out with this number of almost 2 times faster than our competitors at the graph, that's a huge margin of improvement over them, and a massive improvement that we've done a lot of work to get to, and we'll be doing more work to improve going forward. So those 3 areas are some of my proudest pieces, or my proudest piece of the team over the past 11 months. Looking forward, yeah, more networks, you'll see that. More performance improvements, more features, and then the launch of the SUBQUERY network imminently, very soon. But as I said, there's a lot of moving pieces. It's not just launching a network. You have to launch a token. You have to get exchanges. You have to kind of grow the community and bootstrap the network so it starts correctly and the rates are correct and it's organic but also sustainable from day one. This is a kind of a big challenge for the rest of this year going forward. So maybe next time I talk to you, and in next year, we'll be talking about the number of people on our network and how it's grown over the past 12 months, and how we've managed to build a sustainable data infrastructure kind of service.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely looking forward to it as well. I mean, very early on in this call, we kind of called Graph the Goliath of the industry, but I think after this whole AMA, it's clear to see that that's no longer the case, and who knows how big SUBQUERY can get from this point on. I mean, it's just literally a matter of time. You guys kind of have everything set up for success, and we obviously wish you the best in that on that path. And it's no wonder that OIG invested in you from the very beginning. We saw this, right? And it's just incredible to see the growth. And the same for me when you say a year's time we're going to be talking about all the people and all the networks that you've became involved with. So yeah, definitely looking forward to the future. James, it was a pleasure speaking today. And for all our viewers, where can they find you?
Yeah, they can find us on Twitter. They can find me on Twitter. So SUBQUERY Network, and you should be able to find me, James Bailey, on Twitter as well. Our main place where people hang out is in Discord. We have a massive Discord community. I think it's about 65,000 members on it. So that's probably the best place. I'm lurking there all the time, answering questions, mostly in the technical support channel. Yeah, just keep an eye on YouTube, Twitter. You'll see us around, and you'll see us working to educate developers in whatever ecosystem is your favorite. We'll be there soon.
Awesome. That wraps up our AMA with SUBQUERY, and thank you all for joining us today. All the links will be in the description, so make sure to follow SUBQUERY and James Bailey for all the latest news coming out from SUBQUERY. Once again, thank you so much, James. You have yourself a wonderful day, and until next time.